Most agents have no idea what it actually costs to get a real estate lead to the closing table, and that is why they're consistently broke. Today, I'm going to talk about 3 real estate metrics that agents need to understand to succeed in any market. In order to build a profitable lead generation system, agents need to track these 3 metrics. These numbers create clarity around cost, profit, and long-term value within your business. And more importantly, if you understand these metrics, you can manipulate them in a manner to make your business profitable in almost any market. So the first one we're going to talk about is cost per lead. And cost per lead is very simple to define. It's how much does it cost to get one lead into your lead generation ecosystem. And here's an example. If you spend $100 on Google ads and you get 10 leads, it's $10 per lead. Now, the place that I see most agents get misled by lead generation companies with this metric is lead generation companies not adding their management fees onto that equation. So you might be getting leads for simple math. You have a $100 ad spend and a $100 management fee, and you get 10 leads. But what they'll do is they'll say, oh, you're getting them for $10 a lead. But if you add the management fee in there, you're actually getting them for $20 a lead. So I have a team that I work with in the Houston market. And basically, this is what happened with them. They were getting leads, according to their lead generation company, at $30 a piece, which, given their conversion rate and a bunch of other facts, made that campaign pretty profitable. The problem was when we added on the management fee to it, it actually doubled the cost of the lead and made it much harder to be profitable with that lead generation campaign. So agents need to be very careful, because I've seen a lot of lead generation companies that aren't adding that management fee into the cost per lead. They're just taking it off ad spend and then dividing that by the number of leads. So your real cost per lead must include all the cost, not just your ad spend. The second metric that I think is very, very important for agents to track is cost per acquisition. Now, sometimes this gets confused with cost per lead. I like to define it as the total cost to acquire one paying client to get to the closing table in real estate. So cost per acquisition for me is how much money does it cost once they're in your lead generation ecosystem? How much does it cost to get them to the closing table? And the biggest issue I see with this one is most people they get them into their lead generation system and they calculate cost per lead, but they don't calculate that whole cost to get them to the closing table. And what happens is they have all these like micro transactions every month for all these nurture systems that a majority of them aren't even being used, but that's going on to each of your closings to define your cost per acquisition. So here's an example of that. I had one client who basically they were getting leads for very reasonable. They had a lot of long-term business. So they were getting a lot of referrals and that type of stuff. So their cost per lead was very, very good. The problem was once they got somebody into their ecosystem, they were using all these like separate services for nurture type services. And a lot of them were 10, 30, they weren't a ton of money per month, but they all added up. And then they were closing about 2 deals a month. So what happened is their cost per acquisition was way inflated with all these things. And it was like almost half of their average commission, which is really hard to be profitable. Now, the problem is most real estate brokerages and most brokers are not teaching this part of the equation. A lot of people do teach cost per lead, but cost per acquisition, for whatever reason, tends to get lost. And so it's very important that agents understand how much does it cost you to get somebody to the closing table after you get them into your lead generation system. And the third metric that's really important, and this one's a little bit more difficult because it's a long-term metric, but it's the lifetime value of a client once they're in your ecosystem. Now, for newer agents, this is a lot more difficult because let's face it, it takes time. The real estate sales life cycle is much longer than a lot of other industries. So ultimately, it takes time to really do this. So for new agents, I recommend looking at like your averages, talk to people at your office, try to come up with some averages and set goals on this to see if you can really get it. And the reason this is so important, this is how you're maximizing your profits from each client relationship that you build. The other thing that it does is every subsequent transaction that you do with the same client becomes more profitable. And that's because you don't have to pay for the lead a second time. Your cost per acquisition, hopefully, once you've closed a deal, is much lower to get them to subsequent deals. The other thing about this, and agents sometimes don't look at this, is this isn't just subsequent deals with that one client. It's also referrals generated by that client. Understanding that lifetime value will really set you apart within the real estate industry. Last one, I'm going to give you a bonus metric, and that's tracking your conversion rate. So a lot of times we just track conversion rate with how many leads you got and how many closed, but you can also do conversion rate within each step of the process. And this reason I like this one is because you can really use it to where do you need to optimize your systems within your lead generation ecosystem to get higher conversion rate. Because once again, higher conversion rates are also going to help with all of these metrics because it's going to bring the cost per acquisition down because a lot of those systems you pay once per month. So it has a compounding effect if you can increase your conversion rate. So to close this one out today, if you understand these three metrics and more importantly, how to adjust and manipulate them, you can be profitable in just about any real estate market. Profitability comes from not just getting leads, but managing the cost, improving conversion, and maximizing the lifetime value of every single client that you build a relationship with.